NFL awards.
There you go.
Now, the award that everybody cares about so much is the most valuable player.
Oh, we're about to score again, too.
John
The game's
Tortorella.
over. Put it away.
Who is your MVP for the NFL?
TJ Watt?
My MVP is Josh Allen. Now, I will acknowledge Lamar Jackson's having the best season of his career right now. We've talked about it. It's a best passing season, top 3 passing season. And I think in many years, Lamar would easily win it. But what is your criteria for MVP? My criteria is based off last year, where Lamar won MVP with signature wins and dominating performances on the Lions and the 49ers. These were wins that set Lamar apart from a Goff or a Brock Purdy, guys who were having uber-efficient seasons. Same goes with Dak Prescott. Joel highlighted this, and I think this is a great point. Dak Prescott last year had an amazing season. The Cowboys' offense was top 3. And quite frankly, if your MVP is based off numbers, then Dak should have won last year and Lamar should win this year. But last year, my MVP was Josh Allen, and then it was Lamar Jackson. And this year, it's Josh Allen because I look at what he has done. A lot of people didn't have the Bills winning the AFC East. They looked at the Jets. They looked at the Dolphins. These are 2 playoff caliber teams, and the Bills this year are undefeated in their division. They're probably going to be 6-0 after a likely win. And not only that, but the Bills this all season lost their top 2 receivers. Of course, Stephon Diggs you trade, and then you lose Gabriel Davis and
I was
Frazier.
confused when you were talking about
And when you look at how much the Bills lost on the offensive side, most people expected to be a gap year. Financially, they cut a lot of guys off their defense. They thought they were going to get worse. The Bills are going to win 3 more games than last year. Their offense this year is going to be top 3 in yards and top 10 in points. Top 3 in points, and it's right now 9th in yards. And I think that's a testament to what Josh Allen has done in these marquee games. He is the only quarterback this year to beat Patrick Mahomes. In a game where it's on the line, you're up by 2 points, 4th and 2, 2 minutes to go, the Bills go for on 4th down opposed to kicking the field goal. They put the game in Josh Allen's hands. What does he do? Scramble on the play breaks down, 27-yard touchdown, game over. Only game the Chiefs this year have lost. Then how about the Ram game, one of the Bills' 3 losses? Josh Allen plays basically a perfect game. 42 points, 8 yards a play, 0 turnovers, 4 touchdowns. They lose that game because their defense gave up damn near 50 points and couldn't get the Rams off the field. And then you look at their other wins. Of course, they were one of the few teams to beat the Lions in a game where Josh Allen had 4 touchdowns. They ended the Niners season.
He did.
Of course. They ended the Niners season in a game where Josh had 4 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. I look at these marquee games where Josh Allen has excelled, and I think that does give him the nod. Some will say, well, how about Josh Allen losing to the Texans? Without his number 1 receiver in that game, Khalil Shakir, against a good defense. How about his loss versus the Ravens? I think that's the only indictment on Josh Allen's MVP this year. That loss where it wasn't a competitive game, but quite frankly, I do look at Josh Allen's supporting cast. And with the MVP to me is the guy who lifts his team up again and again. Lamar Jackson's MVP, but I think this year is Josh Allen's to win it. 13 different players have caught a touchdown this year for the Bills. One of them is Josh Allen. The year that he is having is truly remarkable, and with my criteria, he is going to be my MVP.
Can I say this? Because I'm assuming yours is Josh Allen. Mine is Lamar Jackson. Now, you said yourself last year, your MVP.
It was Lamar at the end of the season.
But you took him to win.
What do you mean?
Who did you think was the real MVP last
Lamar.
year? You thought he was your MVP.
By week 17. Week 15, it was Josh. By the end of the season, I was like, it's got to be
Because
Lamar.
I thought I heard you say you thought that Josh Allen was the MVP.
He was at first, like week 12, week 13. But then at the end of the year, I deleted Lamar.
In my opinion, last year the MVP was Josh Allen. Watching him, I felt like I was watching Superman. What he was able to do on the ground, what he's able to do with his arm, obviously going and win the division at the end of the day, that was overly impressive to me. I felt as if he was the MVP. Now this year, it allows me to also stay consistent because I believe the best quarterback statistically and also in terms of how valuable they are to their team, in my opinion, I would go with Lamar Jackson. This is the most impressive I've seen Lamar Jackson by far. Highest completion percentage. He goes out there and he's going to throw for 4,000 yards. He's on the cusp of 900 rushing yards. He was pretty damn close to being the first ever 4,000 and 1,000 quarterback passing and rushing. He's going to have 40 passing touchdowns. It looks as if, unless he goes and something happens week 18 where he throws a bunch of interceptions, he's going to be a 40 and under 5 INT guy this year. His efficiency has been insane. We're going to look at the second highest passer rating a quarterback has had in a season. He's right now number 1 in QBR. He's been fantastic, and I know when you go into the advanced numbers in EPA, it does favor Josh slightly, but regardless, I look at what Lamar Jackson has done and how efficient he's been this year. This is the most refined I've seen Lamar Jackson. And he's on pace right now, on track to go and win his division as well. Yeah, we're not looking at the dominating year that they had as a team like last year where they were the number 1 seed, but that's kind of excluded out of this conversation already because the 15-1 Kansas City Chiefs don't have Patrick Mahomes in the running for this race. So when now we get back to who's been the best statistically and who might just be more valuable to their team, I get that Josh Allen is the offense for them. But this goes right hand in hand with my offensive player of the year. And I do believe that that is also Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, what he was able to do as a passer, it was the best I've seen out of him in his entire career. And what he brings on the side of being a mobile rushing quarterback, one, we know already he's the best we've ever seen as a rushing quarterback. But to rush for over 850 yards, get into the end zone 4 more times on top of that, I get you have Derrick Henry. I understand that. That's an all-time great, one of the best running backs this game's ever seen. But to be this level of efficient, to be this perfect as a quarterback, it's one of the most impressive quarterback seasons I've ever seen in my life.
I agree.
At least regular season-wise. Mm-hmm. He's been that efficient. He's been that clean. He's been that prolific for me to go out and say, I'm looking at the MVP, and I'm also looking at the Offensive Player of the Year.
These two quarterbacks have had historic seasons. Lamar Jackson, second in passer rating all time. Josh Allen is the first quarterback in NFL history with over 40 total touchdowns, 8 turnovers or less, and 14 sacks taken or less. Sacks are negative plays. They're drive-killing plays.
They are.
When a quarterback takes a sack, oftentimes that drive is ending in no points or is ending in a punt. You know, those are just as big as interceptions and fumbles in moments. Like, they kill drives. When you measure Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen's negative plays, so taking into account interceptions, fumbles, sacks, Josh Allen has much less. He has almost 10 less than him. And I look at what the season Lamar Jackson's having. He leads Josh Allen in completion percentage, total yards, total touchdowns, passer rating, and QBR. He's first in QBR. Josh Allen is second in QBR. I wanted to highlight that because that's how close this race is.
It is.
This race is not a one guy is by far more valuable than the other, because in all transparency, I think both these guys are just as valuable to their teams. That's how much they mean to their respective rosters. But Josh Allen, when you take into account total EPA per play, he leads Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has a better EPA added on passing. But when you take into account rushing, Josh Allen has added more EPA on the ground as a rusher, and in those high leverage moments, he's really made big time plays. You look at the Bills' offensive EPA per play, it ranks higher than the Ravens. Their points per game ranks higher than the Ravens. Their stats are similar, and Josh Allen is leading a better offense. Then you get the team dynamic into it where the Bills have won more games. The Ravens have had a tougher schedule, and I think Lamar Jackson has had more marquee victories and has been more consistent than Josh Allen. I think the biggest factor in this MVP race is the expectation. This Ravens offense added Derrick Henry.
And a healthy
This
Mark Andrews.
Bills offense lost Stephon Diggs. He was a Pro Bowl level talent. He was an all-pro for the Bills. This is a guy that was consistently on 1,000-yard machine, almost 100 receptions. Last year, the relationship soured, but that's a big piece you're losing in the offense, and we wondered where the production was going to come from. And Josh Allen led a team that is averaging more points per game than the Baltimore Ravens offense while losing a Pro Bowl level talent. So I can't dismiss the Derrick Henry factor. No, that doesn't mean that he's more valuable to the offense than Lamar Jackson. That's been a narrative that people have tried to spin. That's not the case at all. Derrick Henry is benefiting from his best season in terms of yards before contact, and that's because of this offensive line, and that's because of Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is clearly the most valuable player on the Ravens offense, but this Ravens offense added an all-pro level player, one of the all-time greats, and Josh Allen is still leading a better offense without that. So that's where I look at it. I say your team is winning. You had lower expectations. You surpassed them. Your offensive production is better than the Ravens. And when we talk about total estimated points added for the entirety of the season, Josh Allen is higher than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is having a historic season, and I wish that he would win MVP. And I think that if this was just an award that highlighted the best statistical performer of the season, it would be Lamar Jackson. But this is most valuable player. And when talking about most valuable player, you always have to take into account the expectations and what we thought about these rosters going into it. And when you take all of that into account, I think Josh Allen has been MVP.
I think the expectation is the biggest part. I mean, you had people raving about the Jets coming to the season, people raving about the Dolphins, talking about how Buffalo was supposed to fall off, and they've continuously built their case about being one of the best teams in football. Even with this defense seemingly falling off a cliff the last 8 or 9 weeks of the season, Josh Allen has once again put the team on his back and been able to do some amazing things. I mean, 30 points a game, no 1,000-yard receiver, no 1,000-yard rusher. Guys, Kincaid in and out the lineup, Shakir in and out the lineup,
Coleman.
Cooper, the guy they traded for,
Less than 50% snaps.
in and out the lineup.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman in and out the lineup. They just continue to find guys. James Cook, they got guys like Ty Johnson making plays, Ray Davis making
Tyrell
plays.
Shavers.
I think what benefits Lamar and Josh Allen is even adding Joe Burrow in the conversation. I feel like statistically, we'll talk about him next, probably an offensive player of the year. He's had an amazing year too. You got Buffalo, they have the best offensive line out the group. With Lamar and Baltimore, they got the best running back, and then with Joe Burrow, they have the best wide receivers. So it's always each team has something to grasp on with these quarterbacks. I think just what Josh Allen's been able to do this year, elevate his game and elevate everybody else around him. Kind of guys like who we thought, we were talking about this being arguably the worst wide receiver room in football coming into this year. He had guys like Shakir who was still had to wait and prove himself, and all these boys. And Josh Allen has made everybody seem like they're better than what's expected. And I think that's a part of MVP. I think Lamar's having an amazing year. I think Josh is having an amazing year. When you factor in the fact that the Buffalo Bills are the number 2 seed in football, if they've beaten, I think it's a record that they've beaten the 2 number 1 seeds in both conferences, in the Chiefs, in the Lions. Josh Allen was great in both of those. I do think Lamar Jackson has the beating more 500 teams. He does have that. But just beating Detroit and beating Kansas City, who seem like they've been unbeaten all year, kind of favors in the fact that they've beaten those other teams like the Steelers and whatnot. I think for me, Josh Allen is my MVP. Last year, I went with Josh Allen, but I think the same argument applies, honestly. Statistically, Josh may not have the wow numbers like he did last year, but the turnovers are cut in half.
Yep.
The record is still there. Actually, probably even better this year. And on top of that, he's been one of the most dominant players in football. I mean, what is it, 10-plus rushing touchdowns? And these aren't just push,
He has 12.
Yeah, it's insane. These aren't just little tugs at the 1-yard line, though. These are
Some of
legit
them are.
Some of them are.
For sure. I think he has the record for most. It's like 6 touchdowns with more than 10 rushing or something like that for a quarterback. It's some ridiculous shit, but Josh is my MVP.
Josh Allen cut his interceptions last year into a third, 18-6. Last year, he had the lowest sack rate in football at 3.9. This year, it's below 3 at 2.8.
And we got to take that into account. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have been pressured at the same amount this year. They're both in the 30 percentile. Like, I think Josh Allen is 31-something% and Lamar Jackson is a little bit higher, but they're both like 31%. Mm-hmm. It's basically the same. And Lamar's taking way more sacks than Josh Allen. And you cannot dismiss that. Way more is, you said Lamar Jackson had 5 turnovers, correct?
He has 4 INTs and 4 lost fumbles.
I have it. Josh Allen has been pressured 31.6% of the time. He's taken 14 sacks. Lamar Jackson has been pressured 32.2% of the time. So 0.6 more. He's taking 23 more sacks. I mean, no, he's taking 23 sacks. So he took 9 more sacks than Josh Allen.
Okay.
That's a significant amount.
But I also will say, when you watch Lamar's INTs, every quarterback has unlucky INTs.
No.
3 of his 4.
They're all popped in the air.
Listen, Lamar Jackson this year,
it's like
crazy.
He has
he has the lowest turnover-worthy percentage play this season. Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, I will admit, he has been the best quarterback on film. Watching him all season long,
perfect.
It really
dude.
has
It's
not
crazy.
been. It really has not been close for me. Like when watching, I think Josh Allen has been there too. But Josh Allen, his turnover-worthy percentage play from last year is similar to this season. That's why last year, when people were calling him a turnover machine, I didn't buy into it, because the passes he was throwing were like arm punts. They weren't actually negative plays. it's remained similar. He's had better turnover luck this year to where those have kind of been dropped, and that's why his turnover numbers aren't higher. But the fact that last year Josh Allen didn't win it because of turnovers, and then he's cut it in half, at this point, you kind of ask yourself, what more does Josh Allen have to do? Because he's done everything that everybody has criticized him on, and he's fixed that.
Broke like 30
and now
records
Lamar
this year.
Jackson is having the best season of his career, so it makes this decision tougher.
That's why I don't want this award to be narrative driven. That's the only thing I want to say on that.
Has to be though.
Does it though? Like I don't think was last year's narrative driven in your guys' opinion?
No.
Well,
It was like a Brock Purdy and like
narrative being Josh Allen turnovers. That's
Yeah,
kind of
it's
what.
narrative.
Well, it
rolling
was
from-
narrative driven because Lamar Jackson won because his team had the best record in football.
You know,
that
he's the first MVP that's not top 10 in passing yards and pass TDs and one MVP.
Understandable.
yeah. I mean, how many of those touchdowns did Gus
Dak
Edwards steal?
Prescott
You know, like
statistically
10.
had a better season than Lamar Jackson.
And he lost it 'cause of
wasn't even.
narrative.
It wasn't even.
But the
close.
efficiency of Lamar Jackson last year also was pretty
Dak
incredible.
lost
No,
'cause
it
of
was.
narrative.
And it was the best we saw Lamar as a passer.
Dak lost because they lost to the Bills, they lost to the Dolphins, and then after that they faced nobody.
In big games, they
Yes,
crumbled.
exactly. So that's a narrative. not
Fair
winning
enough.
in big games. So
And it's a good thing we
that's-
didn't give Dak the MVP after the
Yeah,
wild card.
listen, I'm
loss.
fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine with Dak not winning MVP. I'll just say this to this year. I don't think it's narrative. I think it's based on fact. The Bills did lose Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson's individual production has been better than Josh Allen's. Josh Allen is leading a better offense. Like the Bills are better in EPA per play, and
Points.
they average more points per game than the Baltimore Ravens. So he's leading a better offense. He doesn't have the individual production, but he's leading a better offense, and he lost an all-pro player. So when we talk about most valuable player, that's like Lamar Jackson if he did this if Derrick Henry wasn't in the lineup. If Derrick Henry wasn't on the Ravens and he had Justice Hill starting for the season, or like let's say a good starting level running back, let's say like a Rico Dowdle, and he did what he's doing, then we'd have to acknowledge that. But I think it's not accurate when you say Josh Allen's weapons are better than Lamar Jackson's this year.
Oh, agreed.
I don't think that's the case.
People say that.
People have
wild.
tried to make an
People have
argument.
said some wild things.
I
That's
will
wild.
say the
Insane.
only thing I will use to prop up Lamar is that he resuscitated Rashad Bateman's career again. Rashad Bateman has life. And I've been talking about it for weeks now. Rashad Bateman looks amazing when he steps on that football field. And it's also in due part to
He was a good prospect.
he was a really good prospect. First round pick. Never you can't forget
exactly.
that.
He's-
But his career was tarnished with injury. There was definitely some concern whether or not he would ever reach that potential that he had. But this year, the offense as a whole has put it all together. And it begins with Lamar Jackson, like we all understand.
Also, another thing is that the Ravens offense has used more play action than the Bills this year. So that naturally sinks in the defense. There's more space to operate with when you're passing the ball.
And that makes sense. I
Yeah.
got Derek. I want
And
to keep you honest.
With Josh Allen, he just hasn't had that. A better example would be, if Lamar Jackson lost Zay Flowers and had this level of season, then we're like, okay, that's most valuable, So
Can I ask you guys, though, understanding that the Bills' offense is definitely a unique one where, like you mentioned, they don't run as much play action. They're really going through a carousel of running backs. James Cook hasn't played 50% of snaps in weeks, it seems as if.
and neither is Cooper at any point. It's under 50%.
But my point being where I understand we're watching the most successful offense in the league, but this is the best run attack we've seen you guys have. James Cook is one of the more efficient backs in the league. He has 15 touchdowns. He's just short of 1,000 yards. And again, on snap percentage, he really hasn't been getting that level of play.
this is a great offense.
It's a great offense, but I'm wondering, why don't we use play action more in this offense? You have Josh Allen. You have a really great run game. I know that it would be more beneficial to him just to ease some pressure off of the defense. At least
Teams
keep him
don't
on.
game plan for James Cook.
Not at all. And I'm not saying
they
that
don't.
that they
Not
do
saying he's
in
not
the,
nice
in
enough
the,
like
in
that.
the slightest. But exactly my point. He's nice. He's extremely good.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say about this conversation is that Josh Allen has a great supporting cast.
Yes.
I'm not over here. I think the Ravens supporting cast is better.
I agree.
But Josh Allen has a great supporting cast. You don't have an MVP caliber season unless you have great teammates around you.
Sure.
And if we're talking about MVP, like most impressive, what Joe Burrow has been able to do with the worst interior offensive line in the NFL, with T. Higgins missing multiple games this year, I know they're not 500. They might not finish 500. They might finish just a little bit above 500. But with the season he's having as a passer, with the offensive line being still one of the worst in the NFL, I mean, he deserves so much recognition and credit for that.
If I could add one last thing to this conversation, because I think part of the Bills' discussion is it is a good supporting cast. They have had a lot of different injuries and guys coming in and out of the lineup, and that was where Lamar Jackson's case last year rested. They lose Mark Andrews in the second half of the season. Their starting running back is Gus Edwards after they lose J.K. Dobbins, and after Zay Flowers, they did not have an established number 2 receiver. That was Lamar Jackson's case because in spite of an inadequate supporting cast, you could say last year for an MVP, it wasn't a good supporting cast without Andrews. Lamar continued to exceed the expectation. You had the context that Gus Edwards has 13 touchdowns, 10 of them are on the 1 yard line, that most of those when Lamar Jackson gave them there, and then Gus Bus takes him to the crib.